promoting dialogue.
It's 6 p.m. in Dakar, Banjul, Accra and Monrovia, 7 o'clock in Lagos, Cotonou, Niamey and Praia. Good evening and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and online at wadr.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. Nigerian nurses and midwives embark on a week-long warning strike against years of unmet demands.
I was supposed to go theater today to do my hand, but because of the strike, they said, no, we can't go.
The experience is not good. We're calling on the government to try and do something about it. This is National Hospital.
Mali's transitional government approves a national transitional charter for peace and reconciliation despite rejection by Azawad movement. Côte d'Ivoire apologizes over death of Burkinabe activist Alino Faso amid disputed suicide claims.
For various reasons, we sometimes bring certain people to this detention center. So you can understand from this moment that we are sensitive to the grief that may affect his parents and loved ones. We are sorry for this death.
Ghana Education Service shuts down 3 senior high schools amid violent attacks in Upper Eastern region. Please stay tuned for the details of these stories and more.
Here is Augustine Coley with Newslink.
This edition opens in Côte d'Ivoire, where the government has publicly apologized after the death of Burkinabe web activist Alain Christopher Traoré, alias Alino Faso. It's been a week now since he lost his life at the Gendarmerie School in Abidjan. Why the Ivorian authorities speak of a suicide, the Burkinabe authorities reject this theory and instead speak of an assassination. According to Côte d'Ivoire's government spokesperson, Amadou Coulibaly, the government will contact the Burkinabe authorities in the coming days. Here is an extract of the government spokesperson, Amadou Coulibaly, during the Council of Ministers.
For various reasons, we sometimes bring certain people to this detention center. This is primarily to ensure their safety. And in the case of precedents, you should know that we can, thanks to decisions by the prosecutor, keep certain people in detention throughout the proceedings. So the investigation was ongoing. Alino Faso was in detention in the Gendarmerie Academy. For the rest, we stick to the press release from the public prosecutor. This press release from the prosecutor is quite clear. We are a serious country and the prosecutor remains a sworn person, and his statement is very clear about the circumstances. We don't see why asking for more transparency than that would call our institutions into question. The head of state has succeeded in establishing all of our country's institutions. After all, we have diplomatic relations. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs will certainly contact the Burkinabe diplomatic authorities for the next step in this matter. But for now, we are sticking to the statement from the public prosecutor, which was sufficiently clear about Mr. Traoré's death. So you can understand from this moment that we are sensitive to the grief that may affect his parents and loved ones. We are sorry for this death, but I want to say that everything was done according to standards. Nous sommes désolés pour ce décès, mais je veux dire que tout a été fait dans les normes.
Côte d'Ivoire's government spokesperson Amadou Coulibaly. On the political front, Ivorian political parties are reacting to President Alassane Ouattara's recent announcement of his candidacy for the October 25 presidential election. The Ivorian president declared his candidacy on Tuesday, July 29, pledging to ensure peaceful, democratic and transparent election. However, the announcement has drawn sharp criticism from opposition parties who have denounced his candidacy as unconstitutional and a threat to the rule of law. Several prominent opposition leaders argue that President Ouattara is attempting to run for an illegal fourth term, having previously been elected in 2011 and re-elected in both 2015 and 2020. Imo Edit has the details in this report.
Former Speaker of Parliament Guillaume Soro, now an opposition leader in exile, was the first to react to President Ouattara's announcement. His GPS party calls President Ouattara's fourth-term presidential candidacy a slap in the face to democracy. Giamsoro's reaction was followed by former Prime Minister Pascal Affi-N'Guessan, president of the Ivorian Popular Front. N'Guessan denounces Ouattara's re-election bid as a flagrant violation of the country's fundamental law.
How can he explain today that he's trying to find shelter in Inkatiribana? He divided the Ivorians. He imprisons people all day long. He destroyed our relations with the sub-region. It has become a problem for the Ivory Coast, and this problem must be solved.
Additionally, the Democratic Party of Côte d'Ivoire, PDCI, which is the main opposition party, led by Tijan Cham, speaks of a new attempt by President Ouattara to force his way through the presidential election. Simon Doho is vice president of the PDCI.
This personal project of Mr. Ouattara, which has no ambition for the Ivorian population, wants to impose itself in contempt of the law. It constitutes a direct and serious threat to social peace and institutional stability of our country.
Meanwhile, the PPACI of former President Laurent Gbagbo is calling on Ivorians to mobilize against President Ouattara's candidacy, which it believes violates the constitution. Dabana Picasse is the Secretary General of the PPACI, and he says,
"The fourth mandate is in violation of the Ivorian constitution. That's why we want to reiterate today our passion on this fourth mandate. We ask all our bases, all our militants, all our comrades, all the people of the Ivory Coast to mobilize and not be impressed."
It should be noted that the Constitution Amendment in 2020 ushered the country into a new republic. It therefore allows President Ouattara to run for a new term, which opposition and other analysts consider a fourth term.
A report from WADR's Abidjan correspondent Marcel Ariston-Blade, voiced by Imo Edit. Crossing over to Nigeria, where the country's healthcare sector faces renewed strain as nurses and midwives across federal health institutions begin a week-long nationwide warning strike. The industrial action, driven by calls for better welfare, working condition, and respect for professional contributions, has disrupted services and raised fears of deeper healthcare paralysis. From Abuja, WADR's Usma Umar reports from the National Hospital, where patients and health workers speak of mounting frustration and urgent calls for reform.
At the National Hospital in Abuja, the impact of the nurses' strike is immediate and severe. Wards are understaffed, waiting rooms are overcrowded, and tension hangs heavily in the air. Joseph Awuja Akpi, chairman of the Nurses and Midwives Association at the National Hospital, says the industrial action stems from years of unmet demands, ranging from delayed hazard allowances and poor working conditions to chronic burnout.
Peradventure, if nothing happens within the 7 days, of course, we are going to come back to work and then re-strategize, continue negotiation. If peradventure still negotiations does not yield anything positive, our national body will now issue a 21 days ultimatum.
As patients and their families wait in growing uncertainty, others, like Godwin Akwobi, describe a deepening crisis in Nigeria's health sector, where recurring strikes have become symptoms of systemic failure.
So if peradventure there's need, an emergency for a nurse to give an injection to a patient and the nurse is not there, you start scouting for a doctor that is not readily available.
I was supposed to go theater today to do my hand, but because of the strike, they said, no, we can't go.
The experience is not good. We're calling on the government to try and do something about it. This is National Hospital.
In a further escalation, the Nigerian Medical Association, NMA, has issued a 21-day ultimatum to the federal government, underlining the urgency of the situation. Health advocates warn that without immediate action, the current warning strike could spiral into a full-blown health emergency, not only for Nigeria, but for neighboring countries that depend on its medical infrastructure. From overstretched hospitals to voices of despair, the picture is clear. Nigeria's healthcare system stands on the brink. For frontline workers and the citizens they serve, this strike is more than a protest. It's a plea for survival. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar, reporting from the National Hospital in Abuja.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Now, here in Senegal, a bill reforming the National Office for the Fight Against Fraud and Corruption, OFNAC, was adopted on Wednesday by the Council of Ministers. The law aims to reform and strengthen the body responsible for fighting corruption in the country. Christopher Aticho completes the story.
Through the adoption of this bill, which is a reform of the National Office for the Fight Against Fraud and Corruption, OFNAC, the new Senegalese authorities aim to reinvigorate the institution responsible for combating corruption, making it more effective and independent. In essence, the Senegalese government seeks to strengthen oversight mechanisms and intensify the fight against corruption while promoting transparency and public accountability. The bill also includes reforms to the system of asset declaration for public officials and authorities, ensuring better oversight and increased scrutiny of public fund management. This direction was laid out by Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko during the closing session of oral questions at the National Assembly last April. On that occasion, the head of government unveiled several key reforms as part of the administration's agenda, with the fight against corruption as a central focus. In addition to the OFNAC reform, the Council of Ministers also adopted two other important bills. The first concerns the protection of whistleblowers, while the second addresses access to public information.
Christopher Aticho with that report. Let's turn to the Central Sahel region, specifically Mali, where the transitional government has approved the National Transitional Charter for Peace and Reconciliation. Adopted on Wednesday by the Council of Ministers, the charter was previously rejected by the Azawad movement. It was developed during the inter-Malian dialogue convened by the transitional president, General Assimi Goïta, and aims to establish a normative foundation rooted in Malian societal values and sovereignty. Abdullahi Hassan has the details in this report.
According to the authorities, the National Charter serves as a foundational reference for all initiatives promoting peace, reconciliation, security, social cohesion, and the rebuilding of the state. The document outlines a strong political vision centered on the emergence of a sovereign, reconciled, tolerant, and peaceful nation underpinned by a restructured state founded on democratic, just, and equitable governance. However, the adoption of the Charter comes within a transitional context marked by a strategic shift toward national sovereignty and enhanced sub-regional integration, particularly through the Confederation of the Sahel States. Presented by the Minister of Reconciliation, Peace and National Security, the Charter is part of a broader process initiated after the Malian authorities in January 2024 withdrew from the Algiers peace agreement, which they deemed no longer suitable for the national context. In response, the President of the Transition, Army General Assimi Goïta, convened the Inter-Malian Peace Dialogue held from February to May 2024. One of its key recommendations was the drafting of a new national charter. Although the new charter has now been approved by the Council of Ministers, paving the way for its implementation, the security situation remains unstable, particularly in northern and central Mali, where jihadist groups and the Azawad Liberation Front continue to carry out armed attacks.
Abdullahi Hassan fight that report. Meanwhile, the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, has confirmed that the Central Sahel states have agreed on conditions for future collaboration in the fight against terrorism. The announcement was made by ECOWAS Commission President Dr. Omar Touré at the inaugural ECOWAS Sahel Governance Forum underway in Banjul, the Gambian capital. Leaders from across West Africa are attending the forum, to where regional security and cooperation are taking center stage. WADR's Sankule Janko is covering the forum and now reports.
Speaking at the Sahel Governance Forum on the way in Banjul, ECOWAS President Dr. Omar Touré announced that despite their planned withdrawal from the bloc this September, the Sahel states, namely Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger, have agreed to explore continued cooperation with ECOWAS on counter-terrorism efforts.
The two sides have agreed to work on conditions that will facilitate collaboration in the area of counter-terrorism.
Dr. Touré said until a new agreement is reached, citizens from both sides countries will continue to benefit from existing regional agreements, including cross-border movement.
Until a new agreement is concluded between ECOWAS and the member states of the Alliance of the Sahelian States, the status quo remains with respect to the free movement of people and trade within the region.
He also revealed that the three countries have expressed interest in remaining members of certain ECOWAS agencies, indicating a willingness to maintain some institutional ties despite their broader exit.
The three countries have also indicated their intention to remain as members of some of the ECOWAS agencies, such as GIABA in Dakar and the ECOWAS Bank for Investment and Development based in Lomé.
Meanwhile, the United Nations Special Envoy for West Africa and the Sahel, Leonardo Santos Simao, described the region as at a crossroad, underscoring the critical importance of good governance.
The Sahel stands at a crossroads of partnerships, cultures, aspirations, and historic choices. We gather here today because we recognize the need for fresh thinking. The voices of our citizens, especially our youth, demand governance that ensures peace and stability while delivering dignity and hope.
The inaugural Sahel Governance Forum, hosted by the Gambia and supported by the UNDP and other international partners, brings together top diplomats, former heads of state, and civil society leaders to address the pressing challenges facing the Sahel.
Sankule Janko fight that report. You are listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM Dakar, Senegal, and online at wadr.org. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Nigerian nurses and midwives embark on a week-long warning strike against years of unmet demands. Mali's transitional government approves National Transitional Charter for Peace and Reconciliation, despite rejection by Azawad movement. Côte d'Ivoire apologizes over death of Burkinabe activist Alino Fassa amid disputed suicide claims. Still ahead in the news, Ghanan Education Service shuts down 3 senior high schools amid violent attacks in upper eastern region of the country. We also have guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
Many thanks for being with us. Before heading to Ghana, Nigeria's former president, Dr. Goodluck Jonathan, has called for increased investment in agriculture as a strategic solution to the ongoing crisis in the central Sahel region. Speaking at the inaugural Sahel Governance Forum in Banjul, the Gambia, Dr. Jonathan emphasized that tackling food insecurity through sustainable agricultural development is essential for promoting peace, stability, and economic resilience across the region.
If we must get the Sahel managed, the key thing is that we must find ways to create wealth in the Sahel. And that is why when I was the president, I did 2 things. We started rehabilitating all our irrigation projects in northern Nigeria. I said we must rehabilitate all the irrigation projects in the Sahelian region and even start fresh new ones, because farmers must cultivate at least 3 times in a year if you must create wealth in these areas. When people are poor, they can do anything. The young people can do anything to survive. And that is one of the greatest problems we have in Somalia, we have in the Sahelian zone. The second thing I see that we must also rehabilitate, and that one UNDP is here, we must revisit the Great Green Wall Project. The Great Green Wall Project was initiated by the World Bank. And of course, AU launched it, I think, in Lagos in 2007. But after that, it collapsed. And I said, well, let us start in Nigeria. And if it is working, we can push other countries, where we're supposed to plant trees from the Atlantic to the Indian Ocean across these areas to make sure that the desert no longer pushed down.
Nigeria's former President Goodluck Jonathan. Elsewhere, the Ghana Armed Forces have launched a full-scale peace enforcement operations in Baku and surrounding areas following a directive from President John Dramani Mahama. The president ordered camps in response to renewed violence that has claimed several lives, including a traditional leader and 3 senior high school students in the upper eastern region of the country. Despite the latest intervention by the government, a pressing question remains. Will there be lasting peace in Baku? So Ray Albert, a journalist in the Upper Eastern region of Ghana who has been following the situation, provides answers to the question.
Over the years, we have seen people who used to live and work in Boko leave the town and go to settle in other parts of the country. In fact, in Bolgatanga, which is the regional capital where I live, a lot of them have moved. People who used to live in Boko have moved to Bolgatanga, to Navrongo, to basically other places where they can settle and be safe from the conflict. And so, yes, a lot of migration has taken place. There are people who used to live and work for the state in Boko, and they have negotiated transfers and left to other places because of their own safety.
With this redeployment of military troops in Baku, is there hope for a lasting peace in the region?
I personally covered the deployment of the extra men yesterday, just before they deployed to Baku. You could see that this time the state again is trying to do something to try and deal with what is going on in Baku. But as to whether it is enough to handle the situation once and for all, it's a difficult question to answer, because every time it appears things are calm in Boko, before you realize there is ongoing violence again. And so we have to wait for some time to see whether this recent deployment is going to make any difference. But as far as, deployments and previous actions taken by the state are concerned, it didn't seem to permanently deal with the matter.
Sori Abbott is a journalist in the Upper Eastern region of Ghana. Meanwhile, the Ghanaian Education Service has temporarily closed the 3 senior high schools, Baku Senior High Schools, Narigu Senior High Schools, and the Zarongu Senior High School following a wave of violent attacks that left several students dead, others injured, and school property destroyed. The incidents, which occurred between July 20 and 26, have severely disrupted academic activities and sparked national concern. In a statement issued by the head of public relations, Daniel Fenyi, said the institution condemns the violence in the strongest terms, describing the attacks as deeply distressing to students, staff, and families. The service extends condolences to the bereaved families and assured the affected school communities of its full support.
Politics, analyses on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
This segment of Newslink takes us back to Ghana, as the Ghana Education Service says it is temporarily closing down 3 schools and has followed closure of the latest 3 senior high schools after 3 students were fatally shot. Students were evacuated amid rising insecurity, prompting health groups like the Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association to call for the withdrawal of health workers from the area over safety concerns. Our guest is Daniel Fenyi, PRO for the Ghanaian Education Service.
Beyond the evacuation of the students, we continue to engage the stakeholders, especially the district, the regional directorate of education, the school leadership of education. Even today, we still have another meeting on these developments, because it appears these are developing issues and stories, and so we continue to monitor. But at the moment, what we can assure stakeholders and the public is that we have 2 categories of the students. We have one, the Form 3 students. Their case is quite peculiar because they have WASI ahead of them. In fact, in the next coming week, we expect that they will sit for the examination, the WASI examination. And so we are brooding over 2 options or alternatives. Number 1 is monitoring the situation to ascertain whether peace will be restored by the close of the week. If we ascertain that peace and calm are restored, then we might consider having the student back on campus to sit the examination. But if situations remain unstable, then we consider alternative examination centers where we could take the student to write the examination. We are doing this in strong collaboration with WAEC. They have several examination centers across the country, so we might take the students out of their campus for safety, and then have them write their WASI in other centers. So that is one category of the student, the final year.
To be preparing for WASI and finding yourself in this situation, the toll is going to have on these children. How would they be in the right frame of mind to even write the exam?
All right, so quickly, we have already accepted that this experience for our learners is very traumatic, especially as you rightly put, with the Form 3s who are going to write the examination, having to see their own colleagues in blood shot down, dead in front of them. It's a very, very traumatic experience. So what we have done is that we have strengthened a counseling unit. You know, the schools have counseling coordinators, and the districts also have counseling coordinators. So we are strengthening these counseling coordinators to be present for the students, especially through this period. And then the second category is the Form 1 and the Form 2 students. For them, two alternatives are under serious consideration now. Number one is that we admit that while the schools have closed down and the students are home, their colleagues in other schools are in class learning. And so these students would definitely miss out on the lessons they were supposed to be studying during this period. And so we are still in talks. We are still consulting. And one option on the table is that, okay, let them be in the house with their parents. At least life is paramount. So let them have their life, their safety and everything. Stay in the house. When peace and calm restore to the townships or the campuses, then they come back, and then we extend their contact hours by an hour or two.
Daniel Fenyi is the Public Relations Officer for the Ghana Education Service. And in the world of sports, the victory celebrations continue in Lagos as the 10-time WAFCON champions, the Super Falcons, paraded their trophy through the streets to the cheers of enthusiastic football fans, still riding high on the wave of national recognition, including a presidential honor and generous cash rewards. The triumphant Super Falcons touched down in Lagos on Wednesday afternoon. They are rather set off a jubilant trophy parade that passed through iconic landmarks on Lagos Island, drawing crowds of elated fans who lined the streets to celebrate the team's historic WAFCON. And in Europe, the owners of RCD Español in Spain have held a shareholder meeting and given approval for the sale agreements to Burnley owner Alliance Pace Investment Velocity Sports Limited received 99.5% of the votes in favor of their takeover, with just 0.41% against. The latest development has been communicated to the Shenzhen Stock Exchange. The process now heads to its final stage, with the Consejo Superior de Deportes, the body that must approve anything involved in the sale of more than 25% of the share capital of a club, as per Spanish sports law. And that's the latest in the world of sports. That's it on this edition of Newslink here in West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening. And many thanks to Falilu So and Shekin Jai for the technical support. Do interact with us via our social media platforms, X, Instagram at WADR English, and on Facebook, WADR English Service. I am Augustine Curley. Good evening.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, New Me FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Nibe County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Banga, Liberia, Radio Gulf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and your opinions.